like to call this September 12th, 2024 Board of Education meeting to order. Mr. Anagnostou, would you please take the roll?
Ms. Bissell?
Here.
Mrs. Cobain?
Here.
Mr. Micko?
Here.
Ms. Thawczek?
Here.
And Mrs. Hausum?
Here.
We are all present. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our strategic priorities remain the same. We have a strategic plan which reflects the values, beliefs, and hopes of our students, staff, parents, and community. Our 4 strategic priorities are transforming teaching and learning, aligning staff and resources, cultivating culture and climate, and leveraging funding and facilities. And we measure all our decisions by these strategic priorities. We do have a number of public comments tonight. I will remind everyone that our public comment is a time for the public to speak, primarily for the board to listen. We do ask that you keep your comments to about 3 minutes. I am historically bad with a stopwatch, but I will give you some kind of high sign when you're at 3 minutes. And we'll try to get as many people in as we can. First on the list is Michael Ciravino. And if you don't know the drill, name, address, your comments in about 3 minutes.
Yes, so good evening. My name is Michael Caravino. My son, who's at Muraski Elementary in the first grade, is named Michael Caravino as well. And I have a 13-year-old son that's in the 8th grade at the middle school. When we moved back from Seattle, one of the things that we were most impressed by was the quality of the education in the school district, the Strongsville School District. One of the things that weighed heavily for us was public school versus private school. Do we want to send our kids to parochial school, particularly as they reach 9th grade, either St. Ed, St. Ignatius, or one of the other private programs? Or did we want to embrace the Strongsville schools? We believe you have a strong academic program, and that's one of the reasons we're here, is because it reflects our vigors, our values, for a rigorous academic experience, while also providing our children with the opportunity to participate meaningfully in extracurricular activities. I haven't reflected too much on the term extracurricular since I graduated from Mid-Park High School in 1981. But what I will tell you is that I see it through a different lens now, particularly with an overachieving 13-year-old that some might say takes after his father in terms of being a little bit introverted. And the opportunity in which he has grown socially as a result of some of his extracurricular athletic accomplishments in cross-country. I say this very proudly. Last Saturday, or the Saturday before, he ran a 2-mile in 12 minutes, 44 seconds. He attends to his schoolwork. He's self-motivated. I have, since he was a youngster, tried to develop an at-home intervention system where he learns to internalize his outcomes, take responsibility. I throw a few Latin words around when I want to impress him, sui generis, it comes from within, and that I expect him to make choices that are good choices. I supported the same dialogue with my son, talking about the importance of choices and importance of consequences. And I allow them to fall frequently so that they can get feedback, sometimes with one stumble, one slip, one injury, one perhaps consequence out there in the world that is worth 1,000 words from me. And so I also carry with me this trepidation about the values that we are raising our children with regard specifically to the random drug testing policy for our schools. And I want to start by, again, revisiting this idea that the law, at least under a prior Supreme Court that had a different makeup on it, gave this outer limit into which we could define what is and isn't curricula. And therefore, under the umbrella of what is and isn't a right in a public school education, we will demarcate that right according to a strict definition of what curriculum is. And for those things that we're going to define as extracurricular, we're going to allow certain conditions to attach to that so-called privilege. And so what I'm asking you to consider is that although the law, and who knows what the current Supreme Court would do, I don't even want to talk about that. But although the law may allow you to define it in the way in which your current policy has been formulated, I'm asking you to consider for a moment the opportunity to reflect on it. I respect that this is a one-way conversation. We've had some dialogue, Dr. Ryba, and I appreciate your patience with some of us, but we're very passionate about this. And what we want to ask of you is to consider that although the law allows you to go to a certain limit, as policymakers, and particularly as local school board policymakers, the question is, do we want to do this? Do we want to instead, I see my 3-minute mark, but do we want to instead adopt the same legal standard that we appreciate as members out in there on the road with probable cause, reasonable articulable suspicion, the idea of calling parents if there's a problem, being able to engage the parent, and if there is a problem, that we would be able to address that. I need to respect the time limit, but I'll just say very quickly, as of September 5th in the Washington Post, there's an interesting article about the decrease and decline in vaping. That's something that strikes fear in all of us as parents, that our kids would be vaping their products. But what I'm asking you to consider is whether or not we can use an extracurricular opportunity to teach our kids about our rights in a constitutional republic, to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures unless there's probable cause. And that ought to be a part of a curriculum where our children are not groomed starting in 6th grade to casually have a regard for that right to not have to give up a bodily fluid in order for them to participate in a taxpayer-funded program. I swear I had 3 more minutes, but I want to respect the time. Appreciate your patience.
I appreciate your comments. I know I wouldn't mind seeing the link to the Washington Post article. You can send it to the board. Just give it to George. He'll make sure we all get it.
There you are. Thank you. Thank you.
Next is Bev Jones. Bev, you know the drill.
My name is Beverly Jones. Good evening. And my address is 15134 Camden Circle, Strongsville. So I am here tonight, and thank you, sir, for that. I agree with you 100% on that. I'm not going to take but a minute because there's a lot I don't know, but I narrowed it down to one question. How about that, huh? My question is not accusatory in any way, but I need clarification and information on something regarding the testing also. And my question is this. We've been talking a lot about money in our district and what kind of levies and this and that. With our district so financially strapped that you want to force a permanent property tax on our community, then where will the money come from that you want to use for random drug testing for the high school? Athletes, participants in clubs, and even drivers getting parking permits. Where will that money come from? And I know I'm not going to, expect the answer tonight, but I'd really like to hear it, that it's being discussed. I could be way off on this, but I thought I'd ask and find out. Okay? Because your taxpayers, your voters, and all of us citizens need that information. We need to know what will happen if this testing comes out. It's got to be paid for somehow. Okay? So I'll repeat the question, then I'll sit down. And the question is, with our district so financially strapped that you want to force a permanent property tax on our community, then where will the money come from that you want for this random testing? Thank you.
Thank you, Bev. We will get you an answer. Next is Dan Peel.
I'm Dan Peel, 20402 Carlisle Drive. On October 19th, 2023, my daughter was sexually assaulted by her at-the-time boyfriend at his house while his parents were home. I would like to outline her experience as a dating violence survivor, your school and district's responses to her victimization, and your failures to provide a safe educational environment for your students. To put this story in context, I'm going to briefly touch on law enforcement's response. Numerous times during this ordeal, we've been told by people in the school that they have to rely on law enforcement to handle things. Well, this is how it's handled when your teenage daughter reports an assault from her teenage ex-boyfriend. For all the talk about speaking up, how dating violence is sexual violence, Me Too, and believing survivors of assault, the SPD did not really investigate this case. The detective in charge did not actually speak to either my daughter or the accused. He misrepresented statements made by my daughter, put false statements in his report, and was not held accountable for those mistakes. I pushed the SPD and went to the chief detailing the mishandling of the case, and I was met with silence. When told about the decision to not prosecute, the prosecutor told me that half the judges in the county would throw him out of the courtroom for bringing charges against anyone who was involved in any sort of relationship or continued contact after an assault. He couldn't say it didn't happen, but also couldn't prove beyond a doubt that it did. So the odds of a successful sexual assault case, regardless of evidence, is slim. The day that my daughter reported to the police, her attacker had already started a campaign of denial and harassment that affected her ability to receive an education and participate in extracurricular activities. She received a message that night from a mutual friend asking if she was raped. The next morning, she went to her counselor to ask to be moved out of the classes they shared. This was granted quickly and without incident. Her counselor asked if she wanted to keep the reason for moving classes private from the teachers or if she wanted them to know. My daughter was trying to keep this private, and she asked they not been told. This was used as justification for that counselor to not inform the principal or any other member of administration. The counselor also told my daughter this wasn't the first time she had to do this. Even after moving classes and avoiding this individual at every opportunity, this student continued to speak about how he was being falsely accused of rape and how everyone who would listen, including mutual friends and members of the extracurricular program she participated in, despite assurances from his parents they were handling it and would keep this private. His efforts to discredit and isolate my child were relentless. She missed days of school over the following weeks. When she did go to school, my daughter ended up in the same counselor's office crying multiple days. She detailed how uncomfortable she was knowing this individual was telling an unknown amount of people how she was making things up. This counselor provided a safe space for her, but did nothing to alert upper administration, did nothing to start any process about sexual harassment, did nothing to intervene to try to stop this behavior from that other student. My daughter was so uncomfortable in the school that she begged me to let her switch to online. So I started to research her policies. I reread the student handbook, the athletic handbook, and the district's policies. I approached the Title IX coordinator about starting a complaint about sexual harassment. Despite the incredible impact it was having on my child's ability to learn and attend school, I was told it was not their place unless something happened in the school. I was told unless there was a restraining order, the school would not be able to accommodate any other way to keep him away from her. Even when something was happening in class, it wasn't enough to start any process. I should also point out this alleged perpetrator of sexual violence and harassment is a member of the athletics. I only add this detail because while reading all of your policies, there was a clause in your student handbook which stated it was expected that student athletes maintain a higher standard of moral and ethical behavior 24/7, 365. This has been updated this school year to include that this higher moral standard only applies to drugs, alcohol, weapons, violence, or threatening acts, or vandalism. But only vandalism to the property of other students or district employees. Notice how sexual harassment's not on this list. It also specifies that now that all suspected infractions must be, quote, readily verifiable and submitted in writing and signed. These stipulations were seemingly added after I had pointed out this clause last year. I was unable to find the board meeting where these changes were approved. You know, now that I think about it, I guess the Hall of Fame thefts also wouldn't apply to this new moral standard anymore. Theft isn't one of those 4 moral stipulated areas. And the coach putting out a bag and having everybody return things anonymously, it wouldn't be readily verifiable either. No charges were filed. I looked through all the meeting minutes and never found where the change to the athletic code of conduct nor the changes to the student handbook were approved. So even though your code of conduct expects higher moral behavior, theft and sexual harassment are excluded. So your athletes now know For certain, they can do these activities and no real consequences will be applied. All the interactions, mincing of words, policy loopholes are all de facto support of this alleged assaulter and every other student who harasses or sexually assaults another student. Every step along the way designed to deflect blame, shift responsibility, and allow the further victimization of my daughter and anyone else unfortunate enough to find themselves victimized by dating violence. My daughter's seen a rape crisis counselor weekly for close to a year. She does online school only through Strongsville Academy. She's medicated for anxiety, but still has 2 to 3 panic attacks a week. She gets to experience breakdowns in the middle of one of her chosen extracurricular activities because her assaulter was not investigated nor held accountable and in fact promoted to varsity this year. It was a nice surprise for us a couple of weeks ago. A heads up from administration would have been nice. I know it's a lot to keep track of. I would hope the principal would be able to keep tabs on the one student accused of sexual assault and sexual harassment. Maybe it just got lost in the shuffle. But my daughter is strong. She's thriving. She's taking Tri-C classes through CCP. She holds her head high despite being let down by every authority in her life besides her family. But her strength shouldn't excuse your school's poor handling of the situation. A lesser person could have been affected much worse. You could have a suicide on your hands with how you treat assault victims. My daughter went to the counselor for help and received minimal. I have gone to administration for help and received none. You have policies about bullying, dating violence, and sexual harassment, 5517.01. It outlines your responsibilities for how to conduct an investigation. Follow them. This district is more afraid of a lawsuit from keeping an alleged rapist off the field than they are about protecting their victimized students from harassment. To make myself clear, this is what I'd like the board to implement. An investigation not only into the sexual harassment that occurred in the school, but the allegations my daughter levied against the accused. These stipulations were not part of the athletic code of conduct last year. By not investigating it, it means you think that your athlete being accused of sexual assault and sexual harassment is not a breach of moral and ethical standards. Follow your protocol with the district conducting interviews, making findings based on preponderance of the evidence standard laid out in 5517.01, not this readily verifiable foolishness that's in the student handbook. I'd like the board to examine policy related to the disclosure of sexual assault and sexual harassment information by counselors, specifically their requirement for reporting the information and to whom they, and then retraining them to understand the district's policies so that swifter action may be taken next time when one of the students is a victim. Title IX states that any harassment needs to be reported to the Title IX coordinator. They have an obligation to start an investigation when learning about harassment allegations. If it's affecting their school performance, you should be able to do something. And if part of it's happening in the school, you should be able to get to the root of the cause. I'd like the board to reconsider this athletic higher standard of personal and moral and ethical behavior 24/7/365 to be revised to include more than just alcohol, drugs, violence, and vandalism. It should include potential investigation into serious accusations involving a finding based on preponderance of evidence, which is detailed in your policies. Otherwise, the higher moral standard doesn't include sexual harassment, bullying, theft, sex assault, stalking, academic dishonesty, hazing, gambling, unauthorized sale, false alarms, class cutting, arson, extortion, harassment. All those things are outlined in your student handbook. But your athletes are only responsible for 4 of them, 24/7/365. Do you want your athletes to stop stealing at the Hall of Fame? Take them off the field. Do you want your athletes to stop bullying, harassing, sexually assaulting your girls? Having the threat of no more sports hanging over them might help. If they know you won't enforce your policy or will bend them when things go wrong, this is what you end up with: a culture of out-of-control teens with little regard for consequences. A culture where a girl tells her counselor she was assaulted, and the counselor says, "I'm sorry, let's sweep this under the rug," while he gets to keep playing. You guys can stand up for sexual assault victims or enable the perpetrators, because our county juvenile system doesn't care. You can wash your hands, hide behind technicalities, change policies so you tie your own hands, or take steps to provide a safe educational experience for all of your students and treat athletics like the privilege it's said to be. Also, I totally support your drug policies. It's a good idea.
Mr. Peel, I don't want to give you a quick or pat answer. What you've brought to us is very serious. Please give us the time to review it, and we will get you a response. Thank you. Sawyer Kosick-Wheat.
So give me a second. My name is Sawyer Kosik-Wheat, and my address is 12542 Cooper's Run. Okay, give me a second. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. Good evening. My name is Sawyer Kosik-Wheat. I'm an 8th grader at Strongsville Middle School, and I'm here to ask you to rescind the new drug testing policy. I participate in extracurricular clubs. I've been in the D&D club since 6th grade. Yesterday, I joined the Power of the Pen Club. When I heard about this new drug testing policy, I had concerns. This policy should be rescinded for multiple reasons. First of all, the school's own disciplinary numbers don't support the test or the expense of the tests. Based on the district's own statistics, in the past 5 years, only 17 middle school students have been disciplined for alcohol or drug abuse, and last year that number was 0. Even if you include discipline for tobacco use, less than 1% of middle schoolers have been disciplined for drug, alcohol, or tobacco use in the past 5 years. And even at the high school, less than 1% of students were disciplined for drug or alcohol use, while less than 2% of students have been disciplined for tobacco. None of these numbers indicate an epidemic to me. This doesn't seem like a good use of our school dollars. A drug test will cost $19 per test. To test just the D&D club, it would cost $950. That's a waste of money that could be going into my education and other kids' educations. Parents have to pay for school supplies and some other additional school fees, but this policy takes thousands of dollars that could be spent on actual educational needs. If you went based off of, say, parents wanting you to do it for their child, or where there is a suspicion of drug abuse, much less money would be spent. We need every dollar we can get because everyone here knows we don't get enough money for schools as is. But setting aside the costs, student drug tests should be done only when there is reason to believe that a specific student has an issue, or when a parent requests a drug test. I understand that this policy requires parental consent, but I also understand that if consent is not granted, the student would not be permitted to be in any extracurricular activities, so it's not true consent. I want to do D&D, so I have to take this drug test. It's a mild embarrassment for me, but I think we should look at some other perspectives. My brother is neurodivergent, he's in 3rd grade, and he won't have to deal with this for 3 years, but eventually he will. When he's in 6th grade, he may want to join a group. I and my parents will encourage him to, since it's good for neurodivergent people, and they can make more friends through clubs than they may in an academic setting. Here's another example. I have a friend who is neurodivergent. He's the main reason I'm up here. He's in D&D. Your policy will force him to pee in a cup unnecessarily, and while that may not sound bad to you, someone neurodivergent could find it far more challenging or difficult. My brother struggles with things that people would call everyday, and that's okay. But for neurodivergent people, these extracurriculars are incredibly helpful. They can make more friends and be more social, which is hard enough as a neurotypical person. This policy is simply not accommodating to people with autism, ADHD, anxiety disorders, and neurodivergent people in general. All in all, this is a waste of money. This is barely voluntary. In fact, it's gatekeeping. You may have students who won't participate in clubs because of this policy, and that is counterproductive. In fact, don't just believe me. The National Institute of Health has conducted multiple studies indicating that extracurricular activities protect against substance use by increasing social bonding among peers, modeling of socially acceptable behaviors by peers and adults, and facilitating the socialization of pro-social norms. Why would you want to put a roadblock to activities that will naturally prevent the very problem you are trying to prevent? I am asking for you to reverse this policy. I don't think it should exist at all, but if this board thinks it is important, I would request that you allow parents to opt out of the program while still being allowed to be in extracurricular clubs. At minimum, you should exempt neurodivergent students from drug testing. Thank you.
Sawyer, thank you. You spoke very well. I know your parents are proud of you. I know we're proud of you. Thank you. Next, have a group, so I'll just call you up individually, and then suppose we can just multiply 3 minutes by the number. Katie Drake, Peyton Koppel, Zoe Tran, Christian Zarafat. Close enough. You have approximately 12 minutes.
Woohoo! Wow. We're big spenders, I feel like. Do you want us to all give our addresses? Would that
We're
be
gonna
helpful?
hold to protocol, so as you come up, if you can give us your name and address, that'd be wonderful.
Okay. Katie Drake, 20464 Village Green Drive. Hi, my name is Katie Drake. I am very honored to be able to work with these young people behind me. I said young people, that makes me feel old. And sorry. I am privileged to be able to volunteer for Mr. Wingler's leadership group. And he wanted to be here today, but he had a family thing, so I am here. And I wanted to just speak on the behalf of them and have them kind of give them their vision. Every year we ask, every class, what's something that you want to change in our community or your school? And these lovely kids said, we would like to come against apathy. We see apathy within people just not caring. So we want to bring some spirit back, and we wanted to, well, they want to cordially invite you to our homecoming parade as part of that spirit initiative, but it goes deeper than that. They've also put together lunch with an athlete, so we have athletes going into the elementary schools and sharing lunch and playing at recess, which is amazing. They're treated like rock stars when they go there, because every elementary school kid's like, wow, you came to see me. And there's value on both ends, because they have value to be able to impart something, and there's value where the elementary school kids feel like they're worth investing in. And it's been really awesome to be a part of, and we're also bringing back pep rallies, and that has been great as well. So thank you for all your cooperation, Cameron and Jenny. I so appreciate it. And now I'm going to let them talk a little bit, because you don't need to hear from me. I really want you to hear from them. But I just wanted to give a brief introduction. These are some of our best students in Strongsville. I want you to know that not every kid has this type of initiative. They've met with me over the summer. We made plans. They show up for meetings last minute when I'm texting them being like, hey guys, we're going to come do this. So we are very, very lucky to have the kids we do in Strongsville.
They're lucky to have you.
Hi, Zoe Tran, 9536 North Bexley Drive. And yeah, just like she was saying, our goal is to improve community spirit, and we want to bring the community together from all age ranges, so down from the young ones up to the high school. We want to build that connection, and so we believe our homecoming parade is really going to help with that. We already have the SFL programs getting involved, as well as like the high school athletics and clubs. We have local businesses getting involved, and people are going to be making floats and walking in the parade. We have each elementary school making a float, so each elementary school is going to be represented, and we believe that having you guys there would also show your guys' support in our community. At least coming to watch would be greatly appreciated. We're also having a community event after it. We're going to have food trucks. I think we're going to have some inflatable activities as well.
So you sign a waiver, we know.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just going to be a great community event, and we really hope we can have you guys there.
Peyton Caulfield, 20331 Fox Drive. Hi, Zoe pretty much summed it up pretty well, so I'm not going to say too much, but like she said, we're really just hoping to bring the community together. Recently, we've been working with the elementary schools the most. We meet with them about like once a month, twice a month, and that's been happening since July, I want to say. August maybe, and we've just been kind of working with them, kind of getting their ideas and putting them into real life. We're hoping that their creative thoughts can kind of just come to real life in this parade, and we're so excited to have them come out with us, and we're really excited for this, and we hope you guys can be there as well. The other things that Mrs. Drake was talking about is the elementary schools that we've been visiting. I love working with little kids. It's one of my favorite things to do. So I just love being able to get the community involved in everything. And I think this is the perfect opportunity to kind of bring Strongsville back together. I know we had homecoming parades a really long time ago. So this is going to be the first one we've had in a super duper long time. And we're just hoping we can make it the best we can. And we're just hoping with your guys' support we can just really improve the community, bring it all together, and have a great time.
Hello, my name is Christian Zarifi, 14465 Oakland Park Drive. The girls summed it up pretty good. You know, they don't leave me with much to say. But there's been a lot of work put into all of this. You know, we've been coming together since freshman year trying to make a change to this leadership group. But my junior year, it really took off, and we decided we wanted to drive community spirit in the city of Strongsville, because we've got great schools, we've got a great district, and we want to put it all together and bring the community spirit. So, we've got the pep rallies, lunch with an athlete. Mrs. Drake has worked with the mentorship program at the middle school. We want to show them, a lot of people are stressed going into high school, so we're trying to fix that for them, go down there, tell them it's all right, and give them an older person to look up to and talk to. So with the parade, we just want to really put it all together. We've got the band, the orchestra, Special Olympics, unified sports, on top of our athletic groups in elementary schools. We just really want to bring everyone together, be cohesive there, and just make this a better community. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
I think you guys are great. Good luck.
We would love for you guys to be in the parade if you wanted to be in it. You could totally be the Grand Marshal if you wanted to, Mr. Crow or Mr. Dr. Ivo. You guys can fight it out.
The Marshall.
Yeah, Cameron and I are going to fight really hard.
Do we have to make a float, or can we just
You
walk?
can just walk. You can get golf carts. You could do all kinds of things.
Before you run, I was distracted. When is the parade?
It's our next board meeting, which we will change.
When is the parade? Into the microphone.
The parade's September 26th at 6:30.
And where is the parade?
Route pending currently. We're working on our fourth route here. We're going to have a meeting with the mayor soon to get that all squared away, because we get it checked out and then the next person up says it's bad, but we're going to get it figured out and we're going to put it all over social media and make sure everybody knows.
And if someone didn't do social media, where would they go to find out where the Grand Marshal should show up?
I would,
Asking for a friend.
Well, we're trying to get some signage around Strongsville as well, so that's our next step. We need to kind of find places where we can, I don't know if we can order them in kind of short notice, so we're going to have to figure that out, but we will be posting things all over the city of Strongsville, hoping that everyone can see it in every pathway they cross.
Couldn't we put it on the Strongsville page? In the newsletter, too.
It's
Yeah.
kind of in the newsletters. We're working on a banner over Pearl Road, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But we know for next year. But we will work for signage, and we're going to go to the councilman next week. We're coming for you, councilman, to ask for permission for sign.
What about the makerspace or the derby or stuff like that that makes things? Do you think they would be able to?
We would love to get, it's a short timeline.
Right, right.
But if we can, we would love their help.
I know we've all done stuff with yard signs with like election and stuff, so if you want to reach out to us, we could probably send our contacts over in terms of who.
Ted at Next Day Signs is really nice and easy to work with.
And he's turned around.
And he turns around very fast.
Like next day signs.
Yeah.
So give it a week. Well, thank you very much for joining us and coming to our public comment. And again, I got distracted. The parade is when?
September 26th at 6:30.
We'll be there. Thanks very
Thank
much.
you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Nice.
Thank you. We have to change this board meeting.
Next on our agenda is Board of Education discussion items. Did I skip something? I did skip something. Next on our agenda is approval of minutes. A motion to approve the minutes of August 22nd, 2024 board meeting. All district video and audio is a permanent part of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
It's part of the consent calendar.
Oh. Remove, so moved.
Does anyone agree that it's part of the consent calendar? Moving on. I will remember that it's part of the consent calendar one day.
You've completely lost your Grand Marshal part.
You're fired.
That was
Oh,
the
darn.
test.
Okay, next on our agenda is Board of Education discussion. The first one is levy implications. George, you had a presentation. You want to start us off with some of your information, and then that will lead us into our board discussion.
Okay, so I have a few financial scenarios. So Dr. Araba and I got together, we put a few financial scenarios together for levy implications. One if the levy passes, one if the levy fails, and then one if the levy fails. Financially, what do we have to do to balance our budget? And just to kind of remind everyone, this isn't a new levy. It's a renewal levy that was originally passed in 2019. For all intents and purposes, it expired. It'll expire at the end of this calendar year. We already received our last collection, so all intents and purposes, that levy's coming off the books, and this new levy for $4.9 million would be a continuing levy versus the renewal that was coming off the books at a little bit lower millage rate. So starting point with these levy scenarios or modeling, we started with our cash balance policy. That we adopted this cash balance policy a few years ago. It kind of sets a foundation on financially kind of a roadmap to how we kind of look at when to make reductions and ask for new dollars and to balance our books on moving forward, and kind of just looking at that forecast as a financial roadmap. Just kind of hitting the high points of it, that the board believes maintaining a cash reserve, unencumbered, unreserved balance of 90 days of operating expenditures is necessary in the interest of sound fiscal management. The board affirms that tax levies may be pursued and/or district's finances otherwise managed to ensure general operating fund unencumbered, unreserved cash balance equivalent to at least 90 days of operating expenditures. Promptly upon receiving an indication that such balance may not be achieved within any year of the rolling 5-year forecast, the treasurer CFO shall report such a finding to the board. Upon notification, the treasurer CFO and the superintendent and treasurer will prepare proposed options that the board may consider to forestall such an eventuality. So the 5-year forecast is a tool that school districts in Ohio must abide by. It's under the law that we present and submit to the board and submit to the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce twice a year, once in November and again in May. It's a tool that they use to project the financial health of a school district, and if not, when they intervene with their financial statuses of fiscal precaution, caution, watch, and then emergency. So the 5-year forecast, what it is, it's based on historical trends and current factors. This information is then extrapolated into estimates for subsequent years. The forecast variables can change multiple times throughout the fiscal year, and while cash flow monitoring helps identify unexpected variances, no process is guaranteed. The intent is to provide the district's financial trend over time and a roadmap for decisions aimed at encouraging financial sustainability and stability. The forecast that's used below is based on our May 2024 forecast, with updates based on actual information where appropriate. For example, since May, fiscal year 24 has been finalized, so those are actual numbers. We had our cash collections for this year, so that portion was updated. While the rest of the forecast, we're working on the rest of our budget to be adopted at our next board meeting. We'll be updated at that time with the budget forecast, and then in November, as we're trending out the rest of the year, it'll be updated again. So kind of just wanted to know just kind of state where the numbers are coming from. So this first scenario, if both levies pass, when I say both levies, we also do have another renewal that's out on the books that was originally passed in 2007. The first attempt that we can have at that renewal levy is November of 2026. If not passed, it expires in November of 2027, which is fiscal year 28. In all three scenarios, for this modeling purposes, we're assuming that the next renewal would be approved just for these dollars, but that's not a guarantee. But at this time, that's just where the numbers are. Just wanted to highlight that. If the 4.9 mil continuing levy, which will be on the ballot November 2024, and the 2007 renewal levy, which will be on the ballot November 2026, passes, we will have 90 days cash on hand for the duration of the 5-year forecast, and no reductions will be needed per the cash balance reserve policy. Rather, the district would be able to continue to invest in our students and district by eliminating athletic and select student fees, as well as offering free full-day kindergarten. To kind of show the modeling, the numbers here represent the cash balance beginning in 2024. We had the actual fiscal year projections that was presented at the last meeting. We ended the previous fiscal year at 51.2, and then adding in the new millage for 2025, and then just kind of modeling out the 4.9 levy coming on the books, as it's not in these numbers up top, as for all intents and purposes it's expired. And then at the last meeting, the board has said if it passes, the elimination of athletic fees, elimination of select student fees, and free full-day kindergarten would be implemented. So I factored in those, what those costs would be, so removing those revenues from our revenues. And then also with the free full-day kindergarten, it's kind of twofold. We have the tuition, and then to add free full-day kindergarten, we would need to add additional staff, so that's why those expenses are in the staff portion of it. So modeling that out, looking at the unencumbered cash balance throughout the rolling 5-year forecast, we would begin deficit spending. The forecast does show in 2025 by 300,000, but depending on how the year goes, that's plus or minus. And same thing with a lot of these, is plus or minus based on how the year goes. But it would be a spend down on the cash, and then in the fifth year of the forecast, looking at fiscal year 2029, we would end the 5-year forecast with in compliance with the cash balance policy of 97 days cash on hand. Each year, this year we would have about 200, and then 2026 182, and then so on with the 5th year of 97 days. Any questions so far? All right, the next example is scenario 2, if the November levy fails and the renewal levy in the future passes. If the 4.9 continuing levy fails and the 2007 renewal levy in 2026 passes, we will not have 90 days cash on hand for the duration of the 5-year forecast, and therefore reductions will be needed per the cash balance reserve policy. In this scenario, without any reductions, we will drop below the 90-day threshold at the end of fiscal year 2027, which is in 2 fiscal years. So current fiscal year that we're in is fiscal year 2025. With the half-year levy coming off the books, we would be deficit spending by that amount, and then the following year, 2026, it would be the full levy coming off the books of 11.5, with a deficit spend of 11.5. So drawing down the cash balance that we have, in 2027, we would end the fiscal year with 81 days of cash days. In 2028, with 25 cash days, and then in 2029, we'd be looking at a $11 million deficit, which at that point we cannot go into deficit, and if we don't act, the state would get involved and whatnot. And then the last scenario is assuming if the November levy fails and the other renewal levy passes, in order to meet our 90-day cash balance policy for the 5th year of the forecast. This is just a timeline and recommendation of what we would need to do to balance the budget. So kind of just, and these, the time, it's just the recommendation, but the timeline and the amounts could change based year to year in order to meet the same goal, but we felt that this is one way we can get there, is looking at year 1 reductions for the next fiscal year 2026 of $3 million, and then the following fiscal year another $3.5 million, and these would be permanent, so each year they would accumulate, and then in year 3 another $3 million, and then the 5th year another $3 million, for accumulation in that 2029 school year of $12.5 million, which would result at the 90 days cash on hand for the rolling 5-year forecast period. So any questions on the scenarios before I turn it over to Dr. Ryba for the options that and the categories that we were looking at?
So just to help discuss the scenarios and what they mean, if we can go to the first one. So the first scenario would be if our levy passes, we use the 5-year forecast as a tool, a barometer to say, are we financially stable? Are we fiscally responsible? Are we good stewards of the community's investment in our education? But it's also a way of saying, are we getting better? Do we have a mindset for the future that says, today's education, we don't just want to be stagnant and stay at that level. We want to continue to grow. We want to continue to improve not just the quality of the education, but the opportunities we offer the students in our district. And so that, I think, is the flavor behind that first scenario. And having, can you go down a little bit? Not that far? Or no, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. Being able to say that 5 years into our 5-year forecast, 5 years into the future, being able to say that our finances are still reasonable is a laudable goal. It should be what we are striving for. George, you and I have talked about it. We put that cash balance reserve policy in place so that we could have an additional tool beyond the 5-year forecast to determine when we're able to take one-time funds and redirect them, which is that 070 fund. We don't redirect those funds to whatever pet project we want. We specifically say, we know we have, in addition to our day-to-day operating requirements, we know we have capital improvement requirements. We need to maintain the buildings we're in, and at the same time, we need to be able to say what is a positive, forward-looking stance to always improve, to always get better for the students, for the children in our community. So we created that fund because the 5-year forecast wasn't a good enough tool. And that 070 fund, we were fortunate enough to be able to make a transfer to that. Is it 2 years ago now? It's still 1 year.
2023.
Yeah.
Spring of 2023.
Knowing that we have big capital issues, and we wanted to start that plan because we're always behind the 8 ball in school district business, but we're able to be one of the best run school districts in Cuyahoga County today, and in the best financial footing the district has been in at least the last 20 years, by my estimation. But at the same time, we've said that 90-day cash balance policy, that's 90 days. That's 3 months. That's what we say is our minimum commitment to our community and to our employees and to our city, that our minimum is 90 days. I don't ever want to get near that 90-day policy. I don't think anybody in the, looking at it just from finances, I don't think any business person looking at their business from a financial perspective wants to be in a position to say, I'm 3 months away from not being able to make payroll. We've been in the position in this district of not being able to make payroll. We don't want to go back there. So this is, when you take a look at those numbers, a lot of times people look at it and say, oh my gosh, you have too much money. What we have is a plan to be wise with the taxpayers' money and not come back every 2-3 years saying we need more money. This is a reasonable plan. It's based on that continuing levy. It's based on continuing to do what we're doing in our school district. It's based on being able to do what's right for students that want to have spirit and are going out of their own time and doing the good things that they should be doing to lead in our community. So let's take a look at the second one. And so the second one is just what happens if the community chooses not to invest in the district and chooses not to pass the continuing levy in November. And what happens is 34 million in the hole? Am I reading that right?
That 34 million is just the number of dollars below, or the number above it is the goal for 90 days. So 90 days would be 25 million. This is how far away we would be from that.
So we're not only below the goal, but we're below the goal. We're $15 million, rough numbers, bankrupt. We have $15 million more expenses, and we still have to pull our pockets out, and there's only lint in it. Which maybe someone would say, hey, it's 2029, we'll worry about it in a couple of years, but the treasurer of the state of Ohio is going to have something to say about it, and so we're not allowed to have this. We will have to address it one way or the other. In the school business, the only two ways to address these things, reasonable ways to address these things, are either raise revenue, which means new money levies, not a continuing levy, not a replacement levy, not a renewal levy, new money levies, or it means cuts. But I just want to highlight, although you came up with this scenario, and it's a good scenario for planning purposes, it's an unacceptable scenario. Owing $15 million, being bankrupt to the tune of $15 million is not just unacceptable, but by law we can't do it. And so now we can go to the third one. And this is the financial guidelines that we would have to budget into if the levy isn't renewed. The one thing I would like to highlight is that we're assuming in this that the second levy is renewed. How much does the second levy generate annually? Ballpark?
Around 8 million, 8 to 9, something like that.
So while I think it's reasonable for planning purposes, every time we do these planning purposes, we assume a levy is going to renew. I also think it's incumbent on us to say out loud if the November levy doesn't pass. I don't know an easy way to just assume the next levy is going to pass. And so what I would
Go ahead. Finish.
What I would want to impress on the public is this is the tip of the iceberg. This is not. I don't want anyone in the public to assume, oh, well, if we digest this, then we're fine. And I can live with that, and that's reasonable. The hill in the roller coaster just continues to go downhill, and I would predict it would just continue to get worse. And I've spoken enough.
I was just going to ask, this was one of two questions I have, George. If you could run the numbers, put a chart together for us at some point that does not assume that levy passes, because from where I'm sitting right now, I have no reason to assume that it's going to pass. And it is.
Any levy, is that what you're saying?
The next renewal. We didn't pass the first renewal. Sitting here and saying, I'm assuming we're going to pass the next one, I don't think I can say that.
Right.
So I would really, and it sounds like
when
it's.
we do the forecast, the first chart that we show is assuming that none of when we submit it to the state, we have to submit them without the renewals passing, and then then we add them back to the bottom.
So will you pull it out and put it in one of these at some point for
Yeah, I
us?
can.
Like, so in the same kind of style?
I can pull it up, not in this, I can pull up the May forecast.
Okay, do you guys want to see it now?
I'm good with just.
I'm okay now, I just want to see it at some point.
I think we want to all see it as a fourth scenario to
Yeah.
say, this is even starker.
Yeah, because it sounds like it's very similar in dollar amount as what we have now, so
Right.
we'd be looking at cutting almost twice as much, I guess. I do want to ask one more question about the last model that I think we're on. You have year 1, year 2, year 3 reductions, but then in fiscal year 29, there's another
Yeah,
row.
we forgot to label the row.
So
That's all.
would we continue to make reductions, like year 4, year 5, year 6, indefinitely?
we would have to, I haven't projected much more, but as expenditures continue to increase and revenues remain.
So we just keep
Right.
hacking away.
Yeah, essentially, I mean, if you look at this here, we're kicking each year we're solving it, but we're still deficit spending. So essentially, you're just moving the can down the year. And then the other thing too, each year, we're 5 years away, so if we get savings in one of these years, the one thing I like about using that 90 days as our metric and our benchmark, it kind of sets that fifth year. So if we have a savings or something changes in one of these years, we can always adjust one of those amounts in the years as well.
Okay. And then just to confirm, fiscal year 26 begins when?
Next school year. So 25 is this school year.
Okay. So
And then
it's
26 is next school year.
summer of next
July
next
1.
year.
July 1 of 2025.
Okay.
This
So it
fiscal-
looks farther down the road than it is too, and I think that's the other thing people don't realize, is that the fiscal years are different than calendar years, and so this is coming much faster than it appears.
Yeah, the
By
fiscal
6
year
months.
is when the school year ends.
Well, yes, thank you, Richard.
Any other questions for George, or I think we can turn it over to Cameron?
Yeah, so taking a look at the financial simulation, so George and I worked off of scenario 3, which says if the November levy, 2024 levy fails, then we have to start planning for $3 million of cuts to go into place for next school year. So again, just to say that one more time, if the November levy fails, we will have to, based on this scenario, implement $3 million of cuts starting the fall of next school year. And so to start preparing for that, since it's a long process to do that, we wanted to come to the board and share a simulation that we did to say, as we take a look at a school district where our expenditures go to, and we have to reduce those by $3 million, what are some categories or areas of our operations that we could take a look at to make those reductions? So I would take a look at this, not to simplify it, but this is a menu of options. It's a painful menu of options, but it's a menu of options that we could look at. And so what I'm going to ask the board to consider as we go through this, these are categories by which we could look at in our budget and say, where can we make reductions to reduce $3 million? What I'd like to know, and George and I would like to know from the board tonight, is if there are any categories that are here that the board is saying, no, we don't want to touch that. We don't want that to be a part of the reductions for $3 million. Let us know. And that way, we don't look for that in our next steps as to what we do. Or if there's some areas or categories that we haven't mentioned that you think we should consider, please bring those up as we go. So the first area that we looked at was this area of staff reorganization. So this is any school district. It's the largest portion of our budget, and it's the people that make our school district great and make it work. But with that, you could see all the areas where we can reduce expenditure. That could be an elimination of teacher or administrative positions, elimination of support staff or leadership positions, the elimination or reduction of stipend positions. Those are not supplemental contracts. Stipends are specific dollar amounts that we give to do work above and beyond the day that don't go with sports or clubs or anything like that. So those are, specific stipends. We have permanent substitutes, so elimination or reduction of our permanent substitutes. Or some of our employees have extended days. They're contracted for a certain number of days. We pay them for more than that. It would be elimination or reduction of that. Any questions or clarifications on the staff reorganization categories? Looking at services and supports that we provide, an opportunity, this would be to generate additional revenue, which would decrease by proxy our expenses, would be to increase the tuition for preschool for our same-age peers, as well as increase tuition costs for full-day kindergarten. Obviously, as George said earlier, if the levy passes, we would have free full-day kindergarten. If it doesn't, we'd be looking, at least in this recommendation, to possibly increase the tuition. Increase elementary class cap guidelines so that you'd be looking at K to 3. It's currently a 25 student cap, of making that higher than it currently is. Reduction of transportation services. Currently, we offer services that go way above and beyond state standards, so that's an opportunity as well as reducing building and department budget line items. So you could look at this through every budget. We just gave you some examples of what this can look like in practice. technology programs and equipment, textbook adoptions, or repairs, maintenance, custodial supplies. Those are examples of line item, budget line items that we could reduce that would reduce expenditures. Any questions on items there? School safety, for safety services, we do pay for a portion of our SROs as well as other safety services that are at the elementary and preschool. That's an additional cost to the district, and that's an area for possible reduction. Staff development, we have internal and external staff professional development, whether it's registration costs or travel costs. We do have federal dollars that pay for some of that, and some of it is district dollars. Internal, what that means is it's substitute costs. We bring teachers into predominantly this building to do professional development. We pay for the substitutes to cover their classes, so that would be a cost savings there. Going down to extracurriculars, we've spent a lot of years enhancing and expanding our opportunities for our kids by increasing athletic and non-athletic supplemental contracts. A reduction of those would save dollars, as well as, again, increasing fees to reduce expenses. You could increase pay-to-participate fees. Again, we're looking, if it passes, to invest back into our families and kids by eliminating those fees. If it fails, then obviously that would not be an option, and part of our category would look to increase. Looking specifically at opportunities, when we take a look at reduction of course offerings, what that means is when you reduce course offerings, you reduce available courses, you reduce staff. So that would reduce opportunities for kids, but also require less staff to provide those opportunities. We have field trips that we provide and support for.
Cameron, is there a difference between reduction of course offerings and reduction of teachers?
Yeah, I mean, they're connected.
Right, that's what I'm trying to understand is why are they listed differently?
They're listed differently because I want folks to know the impact. Because you could say, if I increase class sizes at the elementary, I'm going to need less staff. But I want people to be explicitly aware that to get there, one of the ways we do that is by expanding class sizes. One of the ways you do that at the secondary level is say, we're going to have less elective course offerings, less advanced course offerings than we have to help address. That's where the reducing the staff would happen.
Okay.
Yeah. Going back to the list, we have clubs and groups and incentive field trips that we provide transportation for, that those could be eliminated or reduced. And then, as we've talked about at our last meeting, the board and the district has invested $4 million annually into new opportunities in staff and supports. Obviously, some of those could be on the possible reductions, but it would mean we would stop our growth, right? You would be frozen in terms of here's where we're at now. You'd be in a maintenance as well as a reduction phase versus a growth phase. And so I think it's important to not only see what you're taking away, but opportunities cost that's lost because you're not able to fund the growth of a school district and the needs of our kids. Last is student resources. We have contracted services, nursing being one of those. We have other OT, PT, behavior specialists. Some of those are necessary due to IEP needs. Some of those, again, as a district, we go above and beyond with what we have to do. And so that's another area for cost savings that could be there. So as George and I went through this and went through all the documents we've got from the investments and past reduction plans, these are the broad categories. And so, Mr. Mickle, I'll turn it back over to you to get any guidance again, whether there's any categories on this list that you're not comfortable with continuing on the list, or things you want us to consider, because the next steps would be George and I would provide a little more specificity as how do we actually get to that $3 billion.
No, though, from my perspective, and I'll start and then everybody else can chime in, the one that I would like to take off the list is the SRO safety services. Current events, that one seems like one I'm comfortable with saying we're going to continue the course on that one way or the other. But the other ones, they all have severe consequences. They all have serious consequences, but there aren't any for me other than that one that I would say take off the list. Does anyone else have any non-negotiables on their list.
I just have a question. In a similar vein, don't we have to provide some nursing by law?
We do, but again, we go above of what we have to provide.
Okay. Like,
It's
So
just
the
been
state minimum standards.
Yeah, it's just been recently that we've had a full-time nurse in every single building. We will provide, whatever we're providing, we would go down to what is the required minimum that we would have to provide.
at some point, can I know what those
Sure.
minimums are? Thank you.
Any other non-negotiables on this menu of distasteful but serious?
So with that, as I shared, just to say it again, based on these categories, our next steps will be George and I will meet to start to go through this, and then take a look at our next board meeting to be able to share with the board, based on the categories here, here's the pathway we feel in FY '26 to start reducing, to reduce our budget by $3 million. Again, we're looking to share this in terms such as this today, but to quantify it a little more, meaning here's how many positions in this area we think we'll need to reduce. Here's what we think may need to be done with whatever other area we designate as our recommendation. So that'll be at the next September meeting.
I think another one, if possible, at the lowest end of priority in terms of making it be first, reduction of transportation only because with so many working parents that otherwise may not be able to get their students to or from school. I think that's, not that, I think the SRO and safety services is number one, but just transportation in terms of, I know people already struggle to get their children to school or off the bus and to not have that and then have to find outside services to actually get them to the buildings. I think that's an important one. Just because everyone that has to work, that has a non-negotiable of being able to switch their schedule around.
And I think that's something else that, Cameron, you can bring to our inbox so that we're aware, because we have, similar to nursing, we have state minimum standards.
Yeah.
So it's, we are not in Strongsville in a position to say we're just going to eliminate all busing. We are in a position that currently we go above and
Right.
beyond what the minimum is, and it's a reasonable above and beyond for the benefit of our parents specifically. But I think we need to remind ourselves how we understand that. The other comment I was going to make is a handful of these categories, if you're just cavalierly looking at them, oh, that's not that important, we can strike that. Oh, I can live with that, what have you. If you're Monday morning quarterbacking it. The other thing I would remind people is a lot of those things don't have large financial impact. And so, yes, we can take them off, but they don't really get to the heart of the matter. $3 million in year one, $6 million in year two, $9 million, $12 million. Every year it gets more and more difficult to find ways to make cuts that don't hurt. They all hurt. The ones that, things like, and I'm not picking on any of them, but as an example, the stipends. The stipends, it's like, we shouldn't be paying for that anyways, right? But the reality of it is those stipends are not large dollar amounts. They do, we don't throw out stipends just to have them. They're important things that we need to do to have a good, productive district. But again, if we just line item those items, it does not add up. And a lot of the things on this list don't add up. And so it gets, ultimately, the biggest part of our budget is wages and benefits. And so that should lead you to where cuts would occur if it becomes drastic. And then the only other thing I wanted to share with the public is if you don't have kids in the school, you might be seeing this and saying, well, it's just school. Let the parents figure it out. It's not my responsibility. But a good school district, a thriving school district, a growing school district is an important part of your house values. And for everybody in this community, that's one of their biggest investments. So I would suggest I wouldn't be so cavalier about just saying, you know, budget it, figure it out. You have enough money, live within your means. Passing the continuing levy is living within our means. In fact, it's less than the means we had from that renewal. It is a smart investment. Not passing that levy is a penny wise, pound foolish decision, I think. But the voter will have to make the decision for themselves. I've said enough. Any other comments? Thank you, gentlemen.
I'd just like to add, Mr. Mickel, if I could, one more thing is, you know, for the board, just to keep in our minds the emotional component of this, right? I am very proud of the work that we've done as a district, as a collective 800-person team. And when you start talking about reductions, it creates a psychological stress on the organization. So if you've ever been I've been a part of this when I was a teacher, if you've ever been a part of a situation where you're not sure whether your job is secure, the focus on being innovative and growing and developing and pushing and trusting becomes self-preservation. And it's not just categories on a sheet, but it's people and it's programs and it's services that now, because we're talking about it, is going to always be in the back of a lot of people's minds. So not only are we talking about, hey, this could happen, but it does have a direct impact on our ability to come and reach our full potential. I mean, our staff is going to do a phenomenal job, but it's always there, and it does have an impact. And to speak plainly, we shouldn't be having this conversation. You know, we've done a great job as a school district, and we will continue to do a great job as a school district. But the fact with what we've been able to do over the last 10 years, and the fact that we're having this conversation right now, is a detriment to what we're able to do and the future of what we should be doing for our kids in this district. So we'll continue to do our best. We'll continue to put our best foot forward. But I think it's important for the board and the community to understand that, think of it, if you were told that, hey, your job may be a risk, how well are you performing each and every day? It's going to take a toll.
And so although the exercise is perhaps not fun,
Yeah.
It's important that the voter have the factual information they need to make whatever decision they're going to choose to make, and we'll go from there.
My only hope is that they really do try, if they don't understand the numbers, that they come to someone, especially George, who does understand every number. What I don't want the community to think of any of us, because I know it's not true, is that this is somehow vindictive because they didn't vote for it. This isn't. This, like, is really upsetting. Like, when you look at this, like, I would like to cut nothing. Like, you're asking me to put it in, 1, 2, 3. I can't do that. It's like, oh, okay, well then, let's cut sports, but then we'll keep this. And it's sad to even think of cutting anything. So my hope is that they don't feel that this is some kind of a vendetta, because it certainly is not. That you need to get the right information. And somehow along the way, trust was lost, and we're here, if you want to ask questions or whatever, but this is definitely not fun for any of us, not at all. So I just ask the community to reach out if you have questions. And kind of dive into like what your valuation and everything will be, and how, because I've known a lot of people, their valuations, this is on not the raising of their houses, right? This is still the levy that we're hoping to pass. It's the old valuation of their house, right? Right. So it doesn't have anything to do with that.
Right, so if it passes, the House Bill 920 would kick in January 1st, and as would those new values. So what it would do is, it's on the ballot for 4.9 mils. It would drive it down to about the effective rate. This is my own calculations, not the county's. It would drive it down to 3.8 mils or somewhere around there. So it would take the $172 per $100,000 valuation to drop it down to about $133 per valuation. It would still generate the same amount of value, but as the values went up, the effective rate and the per $100,000 would decrease. So as values go up, the rates go down.
Right.
And inverse, it works the opposite. If values go down, the rates go up to the point where the levy was passed.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next on our agenda is the drug testing of students. Just,
Oh. Discussion.
they're in the minutes, and we can discuss them, repeating what we discussed at the last board meeting. Should the levy earn the trust of the community and pass, we look to be able to eliminate pay-to-participate fees, which at this point in time I think is reasonable. We instituted pay-to-participate fees, how many years ago now?
Long time.
It was before I was here.
A long time ago. I remember instituting them. I remember being in a position when we received increase in income, we were able to reduce those fees. We are now, as I've said before, in one of the best financial conditions that we've been in 20 years. So I think it's reasonable to revisit those and eliminate the remaining pay-to-participate fees. In addition to that, we would be in a position to eliminate a lot of the student fees, the nickel and dime fees, and we would be able to absorb the cost of full-day kindergarten. We have had people at public comment. We have had numerous people throughout the years talk about the importance of full-day kindergarten, the value of full-day kindergarten, the benefit of full-day kindergarten on our students, and the burden of tuition for that second half. We would be able to do that in the community, and we'd be able to do that and still be financially sound. So I think that recaps it.
I do have a question now that we're talking about this. So there was a day when we didn't have pay to participate.
Correct.
Was there also a day where we had far fewer fees, or is that something new? It's like, so I view them as kind of different, right? Like, we're still trying to get back to eliminating the fees because we had to implement them because of a day like this in the past. Is that the case for student fees as well?
And again, I was there.
Okay.
But yes,
Okay.
there was a period of time, and again, it's one of those, you're just trying to get every little bucket to work. And so anything that could be a student fee legally, we turned it into a student fee. I mean, we would, copy costs. I mean, at one time, there was a bucket for collecting a fee for Xeroxing. So, and again, that was just mercenary is too strong of a word, but it was just a reaction to trying to make the budget work. Again, there was a period of time where we could not make payroll. And so anything that could be feed, anything that could be charged back to the parents, we did. And so that pendulum swung. We've slowly kind of balanced that pendulum. We would be in a position to take that pendulum back to where I think it's reasonable and eliminate the majority of those fees.
This is a new way of thinking about it for me, but I do think it matters. This isn't even moving ahead yet. The kindergarten, yes. We're still looking back and fixing what we had to eliminate. Like this is not like new. And I think that's an important distinction. Like, we are still reaping the consequences of having to make these cuts 15 years ago. Right? We are still not back to where we were. And full-day kindergarten, yes, is a look forward. But the other two still looks back. And I think that matters. And I'd hate to see us 20 years from now still trying to put back the things that we have to decide to cut next month. Right?
No, that's a good point, because some of us forget how much time passes, and things that were understood because you were there, a newer parent those fees, you just thought they were the landscape, and you never imagined a scenario that they weren't part of the landscape. So it's important, because we didn't just pick these randomly. These are all had consideration. There were others that we ruled out in our consideration, but these were the ones that we felt are financially reasonable, but they're also important for us to continue that forward progress as a district. So should we go on to drug testing, or can we do vote on the minutes from the last meeting? Our next discussion is continuation of the drug testing of students. Did you want to start with updates, Cameron?
Sure. So over the past 2 weeks, we've had the parent meeting a handful of weeks ago, and one of the things we've been doing, as you know, from communicating with parents, is getting for the parent piece of it, getting informed consent, whether people want to complete the informed consent or whether they want to withdraw their students from testing. So we were able to conclude that process that ended on Monday. So I'm just looking, right, we had 1,949 submissions. Now that can be different families, or same families, right, that have multiple kids, but 1,949 submissions, and out of those, we had 58 submissions that did not give consent, so the rest of them did. So roughly almost 1,900 said, yes, I give consent. The 58 said no. So we've wrapped that up. The secretaries have been working to get the rosters of all of the applicable groups, whether it's extracurricular or the few music or sports. That was wrapped up on Monday as well. We do have to keep in mind that some groups at this time of the year are still getting up and running. So we have some music groups that are still auditioning, the chamber strings are still auditioning, or jazz band is still auditioning, or some of the clubs are just getting going. So those rosters, as they're finalized, will be put in the system, as I've shared with parents that have asked. If they don't know if my child's going to do chamber strings or be a part of this club and they didn't fill this out, if we get any student that is on a club that we find they didn't give consent or withdraw, we'll just reach out to that parent, give them the survey, and say, please fill out whichever option you would choose. So the program supervisors, as a reminder, the middle school is Jason Kepler and Brian Sispansky. The high school is Susan Harb and Denny Ziegler. We're meeting tomorrow to finalize all of this work and to start to put timelines in for implementing the policy moving forward. This past Monday with our parent communication, we sent out FAQs of the most frequently asked questions that we've received. And so we've addressed everything that's come in that I'm all aware about as a group. So next week, after we meet on Friday, now that we've got all of the compliance paperwork piece of it done, we'll be able to set a timeline as to when we want to start to actually implement the policy. So that's where we're at up to this point.
What discussion or points do you need from the board?
Well, I think there's a couple things that I would like the board to consider. As we've looked at the policy and implemented it, or starting to implement it, one of the things that we've been talking about internally is sixth grade. So as we talk about sixth grade, we've heard some parent feedback in terms of the age of the students, and is it too young to start? As we take a look at, since the sports and a lot of the music groups don't start at that age, there'd be a handful of clubs, so you're going to have a very small pool. And we have taken a look at the data, and Sawyer did a great job of analyzing the data and sharing it. And we have seen percentage increases over the past handful of years. But in my 10 years as being superintendent, I haven't had discipline issues or even rumors of issues starting in sixth grade. They've started in seventh grade for us. So what I would share with the board is I feel comfortable saying that the policy would start in seventh grade. So that's the first thing that I'd like you to discuss. There's one more thing, but Mr. Micko, if you want to just talk about sixth grade first, and then I can add the second.
Is anyone opposed or have questions?
Okay, so I'll update that we'll start with 7th grade, and, that'll be our division line for starting testing. The second thing that, as a board, we talked about, and when Kyle was here from Great Lakes Biomedical, he called it the Draw the Line program. And just to level set, draw the line means, hey, at these points of the year, we're going to test a group of students, we're going to announce it, we're going to share here's when it's going to be. The idea being that every student that's in the pool would be tested once a year for sure, and then they would still be in the random pool. So for just concrete example, August you test this group of kids, then in September and October you have random samples. November you test the second third of the kids. December, January, February you'd have randoms. March you test the last third. April, May you'd have more randoms. Make sense? What I would like the board to consider is by the time we're actually able to implement it, it will be at the end of September, early October. I feel that we should start with a random pool. That gives us the opportunity to have a smaller sample size, to run it for the first time, to work through the process of it for the first time versus a third of a lot of kids. And get this process, do a softer rollout to get this process moving in the right direction. Again, our focus has been supporting kids with making healthy choices and providing support when they need it. So I feel it accomplishes that goal, but does so in a way that would create the draw the line at a better time and give us a couple opportunities to run it with a smaller pool. To make sure that we've got the system in place, our program supervisors have an experience where we can control the number of students that would be in that pool versus the larger amount that you would have in a draw the line method. So still supportive of draw the line, and that we would start that moving into late fall, early winter. But October would be a random sample. A random at the high school and a random at the middle school. So looking to waive the fall, draw the line for this year, start in the winter, and then keep it going in the future. So that's the second discussion item that I have for the board.
So I'm confused. So is it like, okay, let's say you're on the football team.
Mm-hmm.
So all the football players are in this, whatever, the roster or whatever. So then we wouldn't be testing all of them. Then we're just going to randomly test them? Because let's say they don't play anything else.
Yeah.
And then, October, November comes and they're done playing. Are they just in the random one? And then if they don't play any sports, that's it for them. They're not involved in that. Is that what I'm hearing?
No. So if I understand your question correctly, it doesn't matter if you only play football. If you are participate in any activity on the list, you're in the random sample for the entire year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're in the sample for the entire year. So if you play football only and not basketball or not baseball or another sport, you could still be pulled randomly anytime throughout the year.
Okay.
What we're saying is that instead of every student getting a test that they know about throughout the year, we'd get to 2/3 of them this year. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm having equity issues with this because let's play out this scenario. Football starts in July.
Mm-hmm.
Those kids enter the pool in July and then are in it the entire school year. Student B does track and field in the spring. It starts mid-March. They're in the pool from March 15th until July 1st. This doesn't add up to me.
So what is done in practice is, for most of the grade levels, we will be taking the rosters of students that were previously participants in it.
So what if they're not participating?
So if they're not participating, then that's something that we would, if they get pulled and see and they say, hey, I'm a part of this third that's going to get pulled, then, they say, I'm not participating, I'm not doing it, or if they have a withdrawal in there, then we'd take a look at that. But as we take a look, it's not going to be, you're only in it for this 3 months piece of it. It would be taking a look at, hey, you're a high school athlete, or you're a high school marching band person, or you're in the National Honor Society, or whatever it may be. The assumption is that you will be back in that group and a part of it. And so if you get pulled and you say, I'm not doing those things, then, and I don't want to be drug tested, then we would talk to your family and do a withdrawal at that time if that's what you don't want to do.
So everyone is in it?
Everyone is in it that is currently on a roster or has participated in a sport in the past.
Okay. How many schools that, in this area at least, that do this also test the non-athletes, non-club, anybody, or no?
What do you mean?
Like just the whole student population?
Can't do that.
You can't do that?
Yeah, so as Mike, I believe, shared, basically they say, hey, there's this part of school that's a right, which
Yeah.
is, your
Right.
7.5-hour day.
Right.
Everything else is,
Okay.
you can't test that, so it's
Okay.
only for us, the students that are a part of the extracurriculars or sports or parking passes. Yeah.
Parents already filled out the consent
Mhm.
form, the deadline has passed.
Yeah.
But we are not going to actually begin the drug testing for several.
Couple more
months,
weeks, yeah,
maybe a month.
yeah.
Are kids currently ineligible if their parents said no?
No, so the survey actually, we gave a deadline so we could start moving and giving ample time. The survey is actually still open. I have the ability to close the survey, it's open. So what we're going to do now is when we start going through the rosters and the students, if there are students that we have nothing on, then we'll reach out to the parents and say, you have to give us a decision whether you're giving us informed consent or not. So we're not going through, when we go through the rosters and see somebody didn't fill it out, we're not just saying, okay, you're off the team. We will reach out to the parents and say, we need a decision, here's the survey link, either complete, you give consent, or you don't.
And what is the hard line of saying you are no longer eligible?
That's what we're going to decide tomorrow. When I meet with the program supervisors to say, here's when we can get all of this work done, here's when we're going to know and coordinate the rosters to the submissions, and then at this point, here is the hard deadline where if you don't complete it, then we're going to assume that's a withdrawal of consent.
I am aware of a family who has already removed their child from prematurely from, I'm just putting it out there because it makes me sad, that it's not even in place yet, and our parents are confused and are removing them already. And it's also mid-season. So like some of these kids played 8 weeks and now are suddenly not on teams anymore. So I don't know, you and I talked about this at one point about where is it reasonable to start this, because you've got kids who've already paid to play. Like this particular kid paid to play, but now isn't playing. I feel like there's a lot of very gray areas here, and I think that's part of the reason we have a lot of parental concern. Maybe not a lot, but enough. So I just want to put that out there.
What are the gray areas that you're seeing?
I like the starting, the whole part about the explanation you just gave about kids being in a pool, crossing from one year to the other. I feel like that's very great to make the assumption that they're automatically going to participate, and then that doesn't account for the fact that there are incoming 7th graders or students coming in from other districts who that assumption is not made about. I just feel like, and maybe we have to say this, there's no way to make this equitable, and then we can move forward. But if our attempt, and it has been since the beginning, to not single out a particular group, that's why we have athletics and music and groups. Over here, we're working really hard to make it equitable, but there are lots of other ways in which I'm not sure we can achieve that goal.
Yeah, it's never going to be 100% perfect.
And I think we just have to say that out loud, because it makes me uncomfortable in some ways. That I feel like, and I understand why we are where we are, but I think starting it mid-year is going to pose unique challenges that I'm not sure were noted. And I'm going to say the really uncomfortable thing, but I know there are parents out there that are thinking this right now, but we're starting to talk about cutting, and as Bev Jones brought up, does this program fall under one of the categories that you just suggested we cut from?
So I would turn that back over to the board. So the board adopted a policy. My job as superintendent is to implement that policy. So that would be a decision that the board would have to discuss. Yeah.
So I turn that question then to you. I think it's really putting these conversations side by side tonight, I think it brought it to light, but it's difficult. Because if we're talking about cutting programs starting fiscal year 26, and we're starting a new program right now, and you all know I've voted for it before, I've been supportive. I think there are a lot of things maybe that were unknown or unexpected with the implementation of it, and it makes me nervous that we're going to start it October, and we may fail the levy November 5th, and know that it's done next year already. So I guess I want to see, is this on the chopping block from our perspective when we start making cuts? And if it is, I think we have to have a serious conversation about what we're doing this year.
Do we know how much this is going to cost?
Based on his numbers tonight, it'll cost approximately $40,000.
That's what I was thinking. George, $40,000, like rough percentage of our overall budget.
And it's not going to be a huge percentage.
I figured
However,
it was like 0.03%, but I might be
a lot
wrong.
of the things that we're going to look at cutting are going, I mean, I've watched the last time we did this in 2019. We're looking at taking $2,000 at a time from different places.
Yeah,
$40,000 is a big
I would-
chunk.
I mean, from my perspective, it's on the list of things to consider cutting.
Then I think we have to have a serious discussion about implementing it a month before we're going to make the decision to cut.
And I think I would have to see data first before I would rank it where I would put it into cuts. Once it gets implemented, are we making a difference? Are we helping?
We aren't going to know that in 6 months.
You're going to know it at the end of this year.
Maybe.
I mean, it has to go through maybe, because it's not like a full school year.
Right.
So, I understand what you're saying. I get that. You know, we implement something just to cut it. I mean, you know, and in the meantime, make a whole lot of people mad. So I'm not sure where I stand on that. I just think we have to give it, our judgment on it was that we're doing this to try and help the kids. So do we give it a chance and say like, hey, has this made a difference? Even if it's 6 months, I think you'll know. You'll definitely know. If you don't get one positive and there's nothing going on and everything, we might all look at each other and go, okay, then you know what? We got a really great group of kids. They're not in, you know, I don't know. None of us do. We're not God. I don't know what they're out there doing. Our whole goal was to help them, not to hurt them. So, but I get what you're saying. I just don't know if we don't implement it, like if everything we do now depends on like, are we going to cut it? Are we not going to cut it? I mean, where do we draw the line then? Then we're never going to be able to make a decision on anything.
Which I think is the whole premise of us having to keep having this levy conversation. I think you're right. And that's really frustrating for us as a board to be able to say, like, we don't really know what we can do here.
Right.
And I think you just highlighted that perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know. So,
So from my perspective, you know, we've done a lot of work in planning on the drug testing program. You know, to pull the plug on it now, I would not support that. I wish we would be in a position to start the draw the line process right now, but I would rather do it well and be patient than do it ramshackle and have to deal with those problems. So I'm comfortable with pausing the draw the line and then putting it in place as soon as reasonably possible. For me, the draw the line was important. For what we perceive are going to be the benefits of the program, right? I wasn't supportive of just a pure random program. But having both, I think, is important for the benefit of the program. So I think, from my perspective, we continue the plan forward And that's you've just highlighted what happens when we're constantly second-guessing where our energy should lie. And it is the consequence. But I still think we need to make decisions based on the information we have versus constantly trying to hedge, because then you're always going to be hedging. I mean, we made decisions last year when the levy had failed, and we still moved forward with what we thought were the correct decisions for in the best interest of our students. We approved increases in extracurriculars, which, assuming that we have to implement the reductions, those are going to be gone, right? And so I think the conversation resonates, and I just think it's, right now, we're having those conversations, and we can all point to examples of where we've had those conversations before, and we're going to point to examples where we have had those conversations after, which is why we should be really invested in explaining to the voter so they can make an informed decision. And this, to me, is an example of of the consequences of decisions. But I think, as far as bringing it back to Cameron's discussion, like I said, I think I'm comfortable. I asked for other input, but I'm comfortable on the pause. Sooner, in my mind, sooner is better. And then bring back to us what's reasonable, and we'll go from there.
Can I ask a few more questions?
Sure.
I don't know this to be true, but my suspicion is that there might be some parents who withdrew their consent who are okay with a random but not a draw the line. Can they have an opportunity to adjust that until we actually implement the draw the line policy?
If I understand your question correctly, I can give another opportunity to those, because I have the email addresses, to share with those families, here is the plan, here's when we're going to do randoms, here's when we're going to do the draw the line. You can decide if you want to change your view or not. So I don't know the answer to that. They may just say, hey, no matter what, I'm not for it, but we can give that opportunity.
That would be great. I think they have the right to have all the information, making the decision. And then this was brought to my attention today by a parent. I don't know what the implications are necessarily, but potentially could be some. It was pointed out that at the high school, we have both a male and female on the team of administrating this process. The middle school only has men.
Correct.
I think it's worth considering whether we have a woman involved in that.
Yeah, somebody brought that question up to me, and the answer that I shared was the program supervisor's job is to do nothing but be a liaison to get students that are randomly pulled from where they're at to the restrooms, as well as working with Great Lakes Biomedical should there be a positive test, and then working with the parents in terms of whatever level of consequences they're at. There is, as we've shared, I know there was some concerns about, let me just kind of quickly share. There were concerns about the Great Lakes Biomedical lab technicians being in the bathroom. What we've clarified, I know the way it was originally written was concerning, and we've clarified what it will actually be. The lab technician will be in the bathroom like somebody that would be washing their hands at the sink, because you're going to have multiple students in the stalls taking the test just to make sure protocols are being followed. The Great Lakes Biomedical employees are background checked, as well as the fact of, I do think it's important to say, is that they have 160 school districts. They've done this for a lot of years. And if they were not effective at taking care of students or privacy or doing the right things, they would not be in business with 160 schools. To verify that, I also contacted the Northeast Ohio superintendents that use Great Lakes Biomedical to see how they felt that they handled privacy issues, student confidentiality, and they all not only said there were no concerns, but spoke highly of how they did it. With all of that being said, I said if we need to have our female nurse or a female staff member present, I have no problem. I'm not going to change the program supervisors, but I don't have any issue with especially as we get started with this, to have a female representative available at the middle school. Although really none of our staff are going to be in the bathroom, should there need to be somebody there, one of our own staff, we can make that available.
And I'm just confirming that the people that will be in the restroom will be of the same gender as the.
Correct, yes,
Okay.
yes.
I have one more question as it pertains to something that we've talked about also, but Sawyer brought up today. Have you given any more thought to how this applies to kids that are neurodivergent or on 504s or IEPs?
Yeah, and I've talked to other colleagues as well. And so one of the things that we've said in our statements is that, or in our groups, is that students that are involved in our clubs of Unified Sports, Spirit Squad, and there's one more I'm forgetting, that help support same-age peers with students with moderate intensive disabilities, those students would not be tested. In talking to my colleagues and working it through with our Director of Student Services, we've had preliminary conversations about it. We have not made a final decision at this point as to how we would handle that. Obviously, the challenge is we're talking about a lot of different needs, and where do you make a determination as to what student would be tested or not be tested. So we're still having those discussions as a part of the topic with our supervisors tomorrow, and when that's finalized, we'll share that.
So that would be before we implement the plan?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So that was going to be one of my questions too, and so you brought that up, of how we would implement that. Not even just Spirit Squad, but if you had students like that were in other groups or other activities or parking passes, for example, would that count into that as well, or just those three groups?
Well, when we're taking a look at the students that participate, in those groups, so we would take a look at our students that are identified with moderate intensive needs.
Okay.
Most of those students participate in the groups that are listed there. If they would participate in others, that would, for that disability category, that would be a part of the exemption for that.
Because Sawyer mentioned D&D, he had a friend that was neurodivergent in there, and I wondered if it would just apply to those groups or other groups as well.
It would, whatever we decide as to what students on IEPs would be exempt, it would apply to any of those groups. Obviously, the qualification of neurodivergent is a wide spectrum of what that can be. And so that's what we'll be deciding. We have kids that receive special education services for a variety of reasons. And so that's what we'll be talking about to see, other than the moderate intensive, students with moderate intensive needs, if there's any other groups that would have an exemption from it.
And then piggybacking off of that, reading things that people have sent us, listening to what people have said, another one that has really stood out to me is a parent, besides teachers being involved in it, I know that's something that's involved with like collective bargaining and teachers union that we don't have to say that. I agree, and I wish that we would be able to do that. And that's been a conversation among teachers I know that have been like, oh, I don't remember if I was tested when I got a job here or there or what I did, and would be a good idea. Maybe down the line, if it's something that Strongsville can implement that's different of like if you want to work in this district. But I know other parents had mentioned wanting to be there when their kids are tested due to different anxieties that they may have or bodily changes. For me, I understand that, and I wondered if there's a way to work around that, or if there is a child that has such horrible anxiety or fear to do this, that if they were to do it outside at their pediatrician or have a doctor's note to say that they could do that because they have a reason to, would that be an option? Just because everybody's different, and, bodily changes and things happening, or this, it could be just a very frightening experience for someone. Is there wiggle room with that? What are the options with that, I guess? If a parent wanted to be there, could they get a phone call in the morning and say, hey, this is what we're going to be doing? If you need to explain it to your child, if you can come here, do you need a 24-hour notice that you can be here tomorrow to do it if it is something that is traumatizing, is the word? This shouldn't be a traumatizing experience, but we're not in the brains of everybody, so.
Yeah, so that's a popular question that we've gotten, and the answer for random testing is no. And the reason the answer is no is not because we're not understanding, but it's the fact that it is a random test. They come in for a short period of time and do the random testing, and the testing company is not going to be, the time it takes to say, you've been pulled as a random person, we're going to call your parent to see if your parent can come down to be present for this. It's just not practical, and I don't want to promise something that's not going to be able to be done. If somebody is pulled through the draw the line, and this is all on our FAQs, if somebody's pulled for the draw the line, that would be an announced day, and if a parent wants to come to help support their child, then we would be, they could work with the principal and make that work, since that's a scheduled time and we know it's going to happen. So it's the random nature of it that would be difficult. So one of the things that I would suggest, and I'm going to make a general statement because it's too difficult to get into the nuances of every situation. But what I would suggest is that, I shared this, it was asked a couple meetings ago. My children go to a school that has drug testing. And so whether they're in middle school when they were doing it or high school, as parents, I believe it's important for us to have conversations with our kids to help prepare them for the stresses and challenges that they're going to face in life. And so we can work through whether it's a social story or a social example, or we can simulate it and work through how are we going to get through this situation that causes us anxiety and stress, and what are some of the ways that it makes us feel or act, and how can we help to support you to build that experience so that you're more apt and ready to deal with those stressful situations, not just with the drug testing, but then you can apply it to the other stressful situations or challenges you're going to have in life. And so again, I don't say that to be used as, hey, that's a simplistic answer to a complex problem of the different needs of kids. But that's one of the things that I would suggest is whether it's a child that's neurodiverse or any other child, going to do this is a different experience. And it could create anxiety or nervousness or stress. But how do we work through that to help support them and help to support them to prepare and navigate through it is something that I think we can all do to help our kids through these first experiences that they have.
Is there a way that if parents choose to opt into the program but opt to do it separately, that they could go to a pediatrician to do it?
No, again, that's something that we've addressed, and it's really, Haley, it goes back to as much as we're trying to be equitable as possible. So
Right.
there's two questions that were asked. Can I go to my pediatrician to do this? No, because it's about a moment in time, and it's about using the same protocols, the same testing companies, the same everything, so that we have equity in the results that are there. The other question that is asked is, hey, if my child is nervous about you doing the urine sample, can they do hair or saliva? If you remember, as Kyle shared, hair and saliva versus urine have different look-back periods, which would create inequity in the results that are there. So as we take it looking at implementing the policy with the consequences and the progressive plan we've had, that's why similar protocols and similar tests need to be used so we can have that as a part of our process.
You said you're having a meeting tomorrow to
Correct.
finalize
Yeah.
these. Do you have a mental health professional in that, as part of that team?
No, the meeting we're having tomorrow is with our program supervisors.
Can you include someone, Carrie Jane Carr, for example, who is well-versed in neurodivergence to speak to maybe the way some of these different diagnosed disorders would affect?
Sure. The meeting tomorrow is not geared towards, as I said, we'll be talking about it, but that part of it will be just getting an administrative perspective. I've talked to Carrie about this in the past too. Tomorrow's meeting is more just about logistics and structure and getting things into place with that piece of it. But in terms of the actual conversation on that topic before a decision is finalized, absolutely. Yeah.
Any other questions? Is everyone comfortable with the pause on draw the line until, when did you say you anticipate starting that?
Draw the line?
Mhm.
I would probably say November-ish.
November. Is everyone good with that?
Draw the line being everyone?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions, concerns? No.
Has anyone ever proposed to any part of the teachers union about having teachers included in this to do that? Because I understand the concern of people saying, if my child's being tested, I'd like for the teachers to. And since then, I've had people tell me like, hey, joke to schools, this teacher always comes in under the influence or this or that. So I get the concern with that. That kind of bothers me. So
I understand.
We will add it to our discussion points for the next collective bargaining agreement.
Okay.
we can always tell the teachers that if they want to volunteer, we'll make it happen.
What would a parent do if they suspect that there's a teacher that comes in under the influence? What's the best thing for
We
them
have
to
a
do?
hotline and the principal, and Jenny, go ahead. That's a serious thing, so we
Yeah.
should
Very
answer it
serious.
seriously.
I've had more than one person say that to me now since this happened, of like, that's a known thing that the kids say, this teacher comes in high and this teacher comes in this, so like
Yeah,
that's
I mean, if
concerning
there's
to
any
me.
suspicion of that, whether it's coming from a child or relayed to a parent, they can reach out to me directly.
Okay.
There also is our Stay Safe and Speak Up hotline that goes directly to us.
What is
and
that number?
It's on, there's on our website, it's right on the front of our website, Stay Safe, Speak Up, that's there. And within that, if you click on it, there is a phone number. I can look it up. But I would say, I would recommend if a student is in class and suspects that, I would go immediately to the administrator and let them know. And I would say that's for any staff member or substitute or anyone.
Just as a point of reference, I've been working at the central office for 13 years. I've had one report of a staff member possibly under the influence, and that staff member was removed, and it was a prescription medication issue that she was having a negative reaction. So Haley, I've had those
Yeah.
comments made
But
to me.
it's still good, though, to
Yeah.
know that that's
Yeah,
like.
I've had those comments made to me as well. Anytime we get something, we investigate it. I've not had, that was the one instance that I recall. But I've had, when people have said that to me, I've said, please provide me with the factual information and the names and what you know, and we'll investigate it thoroughly, so.
Well, and that's good to know, even
yeah.
if the staff member's driving, and they
Yeah, right,
shouldn't be there
yeah.
for their own safety.
Yes.
And the phone number is 1-866, listen to me.
And I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, number 2. But I would just add on to that, if anybody has those suspicions, we want to know
Yeah.
immediately, if not sooner.
Yeah.
That is nothing that I want to take lightly. Next on the agenda?
Superintendent's report, curriculum.
Next on the agenda is Superintendent's report. Dr. Ryba.
Thank you. Just a couple of items under curriculum. Be it resolved upon my recommendation that the Board of Education enters into an agreement with PSI affiliates in the amount of $13,980.63 for part-time Title I instructor to service pupils attending St. Joseph and John under Title I federal funding administered and approved non-public schools by local districts. Number 2, be upon my recommendation that the board enters into an agreement with PSI for the amount of $2,330.11 for one part-time Title I instructor to service pupils attending St. Albert the Great School under Title I federal funding administered to approved non-public schools by local school districts. And under number 3, we do have a revision to the May 23rd agenda for student teachers. Gwen Kowalski's placement is revised to include an additional host teacher, Susie Baraga, intervention specialist. Any questions on curriculum? Under student services, we have one item for your consideration. Be it resolved upon my recommendation that the Strongsville Board of Education enters into an agreement with ASG Education Services, the LEAP program for placement of a student with disabilities for the upcoming school year. Any questions there? All right. For old time's sake, you want to?
I guess it wasn't my last one. I'm
right.
still doing it. Under Human Resources this evening, I have under number 1, a resignation for certificated staff. Under 2, resignations for non-certificated staff. I just noticed one correction, George, so do you want to do that now, or do you want me to put in a revision?
If you tell me what it is, I can.
For Megan Murphy, MM, she's becoming an intervention specialist, but in this role that she's resigning, she was an MM special education aide. So we just need to change that title.
Is that mild, moderate?
Mild, moderate, yeah. Do you want me to keep going or wait?
Hang on. Special education aid,
Correct.
MM.
Yep, you can keep the MM there and just change it. to special education aid. Thank you. Under number 3, appointments for certificated staff, supplemental contracts. Under 4, appointment for kindergarten readiness assessment consultant. Under 5, changes in status for certificated full-time equivalents. Under 6, 1 educational upgrade. And finally, under 7, we have education and experience upgrades for current staff. And that concludes my report.
That concludes my report unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Cameron? Next on our agenda is adoption of consent calendar, action by the Board of Education, and adoption of the consent calendar. At this point of the agenda means all items appearing in the agenda denoted as type action consent, which constitute the consent calendar, are adopted in one single motion unless requested otherwise. Are there any otherwise? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Cobain. Any discussion? I will share that the minutes are part of the consent calendar. Hearing no other discussion, please take the roll.
Ms. Stochek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes,
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
and the motion carries. Next, we have board bylaws and policies. Be it resolved that the Strongsville City Schools Board of Education approves the listed policies. It is a long list. I will spare reading each and every one. We have all had the opportunity to review them. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Cobain. Any discussion?
I don't know if this is the proper time to say that, but I'd be interested in seeing that 5517.01 that was talked about in public comment about the 4 things for athletes versus everything else that's in there.
I'm certain Cameron will add it to the policy committee's list for review. Any other discussion? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Ms. Stochek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes,
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
and the motion carries. Board of Education Other, we have a few reimbursements. Be it resolved that the Strongsville City Board of Education grants approval for Michelle Bissell to attend the Ohio School Boards Association Capital Conference November 10th through the 12th. The cost to register is $241.66. And Polaris Career Center will reimburse the district for 50% of the cost because Michelle is the president and serves on the board in Polaris.
Small question. Is there a reason hers is a penny cheaper than the other 2?
That would only be appropriate to ask during discussion.
Listen, I'm trying to make up every dollar we can around here.
That penny's
It's
going
one
to
total.
So we're going to
Down
let
to
you
penny
ask
now.
that question during discussion.
notice.
Do I have a motion?
So moved, I guess.
Second.
Second.
She got a discount.
Second.
Coupon.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Cobain. Any questions or discussion?
It's one total cost.
Oh, okay.
Based on the number of people we have going, so it's just dividing it by the number of
And these 2
people.
are more high maintenance, probably.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's generous.
Yeah. Penny goes a long way.
Any other discussion? I will just compliment Haley, that every penny counts.
It does.
Because we count every 1/3 of a penny.
I'm
Hearing-
making up every dollar we can around here.
Hearing no other discussion, please take the roll.
Ms. Stochek?
Yes.
Mrs. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes,
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Abstain.
and the motion carries. Be it resolved that the Strongsville City School Board of Education grants approval for Sharon Kilbane to attend the Ohio School Board Association Capital Conference on November 10th through the 12th. The cost to register is $241.67. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Bissell. Any discussion? Hey, George, how come she's a penny more?
I'm worth it. I'm worth that penny.
Hearing no other discussion, please take the roll.
Divided by 3. Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Mrs. Cobain?
Abstain.
Mr. Miko?
Yes,
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
and the motion carries. Last, be it resolved that the Strongsville City School Boards of Education grants approval for Laura Wolf Hausum to attend the Ohio School Boards Association Capital Conference on November 10th through the 12th. The cost to register is $241.67. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Cobain. Any discussion? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes,
Mrs. Hausum?
Abstain.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
and the motion carries. Next is Board of Education Other. Do we have any others? Do we have, is this where we're discussing the calendar?
We can, sure.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Are we voting for the Grand Marshal too?
Yeah.
That is not subject to a vote. That is subject, I believe, to a
Yes.
fight, is what they suggested. Arm wrestling.
I've been waiting for the arm wrestling.
So isn't that September 26th turned to September 25th?
Yeah, so what we're looking at is September 26th, we've got the homecoming parade, as we heard, so we want everybody to look at their calendars for Wednesday, September 25th.
I
We-
can't do that.
That's a no? Okay. So are there any other dates that week of the 20?
How long is the parade?
I could do Monday or Tuesday.
I can do Monday.
Hold on.
Monday, the 23rd?
I can do Tuesday, the 24th. Monday, the 23rd, no.
Tuesday, 24th will be hard for me. I can attempt.
Great.
Should we talk about this?
How about
Try to
Monday?
put our dates together and then,
Monday the 30th?
No, we have a players meeting that night.
how long does the homecoming parade go? If it starts at 6:30?
Forever.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know. It's the first time they've done it. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay.
Dan, what do you think, like an hour?
It depends on how fast Richard runs.
Yeah.
Oh,
So it would be kind of hard for us to leave.
What's that?
it's like that 7:30 then, okay. I wonder if we just bumped our meeting by a half hour.
The 2nd or the 3rd?
2nd and 3rd of what?
October.
We need.
Do
at
we
least
need
have
to
a
vote
board
on
me-
any business
On the
stuff
budget, but
before
that
the
could
end
be
of the
a
month?
special quick meeting,
You got to do that by the end of September?
September 30th.
I
Why
could
don't we
third-
just start it later? If we just have to, like, can we start it at 8? We don't have to,
We can do it at the high school since the parade ends at the high school.
we don't
Yeah.
have to
That could be our
be at the
float
whole
voting.
parade.
Start at 8 o'clock
Just
on,
start at 8 and make sure we get that vote in and whatever
yeah.
other urgent
Do
matters.
we want to pad it and start at 8:30?
I don't care.
I don't care either, but make sure that we have like very basic stuff. like,
No
only
presentations or
stuff that we
anything, yeah.
need.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to
Do you
extend
have to
that
present
to,
your
like,
budget?
you know.
I don't have to.
That was the meeting that we were supposed to do something for school, for OSBA, but we'll change it.
We will change it because they don't want to, and you know what? Yeah, because if everybody's at that or
Yeah.
whatever, it's not a good time to do that.
So we'll keep the same date, but 8:30?
Sure.
It's fine with me, I don't.
What are the events after the homecoming parade?
Dan?
They have talked about having food trucks there, inflatables, games.
Oh, okay, that's right, the inflatables.
Yeah.
Okay.
So board meeting at 8:30.
Yeah,
on
we'll
the
just change the time,
26th.
so on the 26th.
At the high school, are we going to do it, or?
Yeah, we could do it at the high school. Although, if we're starting at 8:30, we may want, I mean, the setup for Scott is a challenge just to be there, so if we could just come back here,
then.
yeah.
That's right, okay.
You're welcome, Scott. And then the other two dates we were talking about was October 10th. We've got a high school football game on that Thursday, so we were going to bump it to October 9th, which I think everybody had said previously was workable.
Yes.
Yeah, I already changed that in my.
And then November 21st is the one that I have a conflict that we were we look at moving it to the 20th. Wednesday, the 20th. I think
Just out
that
of
was
spite, we should say
Whoa,
no.
whoa,
to that.
what?
November 21st.
November 21st,
Yeah.
not
I already
October. I'm
moved-
like,
yeah,
I didn't mean on
Yeah,
Saturday.
yeah.
I have National Honor Society induction that night.
Oh, do
on my
you? Okay.
calendar. I don't know. It showed up on my calendar.
Did it?
I did not put it there.
You finally got in? Congratulations.
Better late than never. She's been applying for years.
Yeah, 20 years.
Well, is that something that we're supposed to
I don't know.
be-
I don't know, it's not on mine.
I don't even know where it came from.
What
Just
school,
putting
what
it out
district
there.
is that for?
You know,
My calendar's done that sometimes.
Yeah.
Put stuff in, I
I
don't
have-
know
I
where
have
it's
no
come
idea
from either.
what that is, but I have it there in case, so let's confirm that
I'll confirm.
that does not happen that
Yeah.
night.
I did not get it, so.
If that's the case,
So we are
it's
good for the
fine.
26th at 8:30, and then we'll move the 9th, or the 10th to the 9th, and then I'll confirm whether NHS is that night or not.
And the night,
So if
The
it's
ninth is-
not,
Oh, no, I read that wrong. No, yeah, no, it says chamber at NHS. It means my kid has to play in the music at the thing. So
Okay.
yes, it's that night unless Andy's calendar is wrong.
Okay.
So
I'll
that could be a problem. I mean, I don't have to go to that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we want to conflict with district events. So I can be here, as long as
Okay.
we're okay conflicting with that
I was
event.
going to say, can we pick a date? And then if we need to, we'll change it.
Let's just pick the 20th, and then we'll,
Yeah, and
yeah.
if we need to, we'll
Okay.
change the 20th.
so
This
that's,
is November.
that's November.
November 20th, Wednesday. yeah.
We're in November, right?
Yep.
Okay, so we're in November, right, okay.
Okay.
Were there any others?
No.
What was the October date? The day before, the 9th? Was it the 9th?
Yeah.
And you'll put those in your update?
I will.
Because I will remember if you put them in your
Yes.
update.
yeah.
Any others? Hearing none. Next on our agenda is executive session on the topics of,
To prepare for negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation, other terms and conditions of employment.
do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Cobain. Any discussion? Hearing none, please take the roll.
Hang on one second. All right, Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes?
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
And Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Motion carries. We will enter into executive session at 9:20. We have no expectation of further business. Thank you for your attention, and go Mustangs.